Bronny James just announced that no one saw coming. After months of alleged locker room attacks, teammate confrontations, and relentless public humiliation, LeBron's son finally broke his silence, and what he said left the basketball world absolutely stunned. But the real story? It's even worse than you think. The announcement that broke hearts. When you strip away every single layer of noise, all the nepotism debates that rage endlessly on social media, all the locker room rumors that get whispered and amplified and distorted with each retelling, all the attacks from anonymous keyboard warriors who wouldn't last a single day walking in this young man's shoes, what you're ultimately left with is a 21-year-old kid who just wants to play basketball. That's it. That's all Bronny James has ever wanted. And the heartbreaking part of this entire story isn't that Bronny James is struggling statistically or fighting for playing time. The truly heartbreaking part is that Bronny James has accepted publicly, and with a kind of quiet resignation that hits you right in the chest, a version of himself that the world forced him to become. Not the version he dreamed about, not the version he saw when he closed his eyes as a little kid watching his dad score 50-point games. The version that keeps him safe, the version that makes him small enough to avoid the crosshairs. Because when Bronny sat down in front of the media after a game against the San Antonio Spurs in February 2026, a game where he notched a season-high 12 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 assists in 25 minutes on efficient 5 of 10 shooting from the field, he didn't talk about his scoring. He didn't talk about the highlights, the floaters, or the numbers he put up on the stat sheet. He talked about defense. He talked about being the guy who does the dirty work, the thankless, unglamorous, behind-the-scenes work that never makes it onto a highlight reel or a SportsCenter top 10 segment. And when asked which part of his game gives him more personal satisfaction, making plays on offense or making stops on the defensive end, his answer said absolutely everything about where his head is at right now.
Yeah, I'd say defensively. I mean, that's my, role that I want to excel at, especially on this team.
And then came the part of his answer that really, truly hit differently.
We have a lot of guys, Luka, LeBron, and AR, so those guys can go get buckets whenever we need them.
Right there, Bronny acknowledged the hierarchy. He named the stars around him: Luka Doncic, his own father, LeBron James, Austin Reeves, and without a single trace of bitterness or jealousy in his voice, he placed himself firmly and deliberately in a supporting role beneath all of them.
But, they need guys like myself, Vando, Jake, guys that can, defend. And definitely get more satisfaction out of that.
Let that sink in for a long moment. Really let it marinate. This is a young man who grew up watching his father dominate the NBA in ways that very few human beings in the history of organized sports have ever dominated anything. A young man who once dreamed of scoring those same buckets, making those same plays, hearing those same roaring crowds chanting his name. And here he is, sitting in front of cameras at 21 years old, publicly announcing to the entire world that his joy, his satisfaction, his sense of purpose on a basketball court doesn't come from scoring anymore. It comes from guarding. It comes from doing the things that nobody puts on a poster. It comes from being the invisible guy who sacrifices everything he has so that other players can shine and get the glory. And the reason that's so profoundly heartbreaking is because when you actually take the time to look at his G League numbers, 22.6 points, 5.4 rebounds, 4.4 assists, and 2.2 steals per game on efficient shooting splits, you quickly realize that Bronny absolutely can score. He can create his own shot. He can run an offense. He can be that guy when given the opportunity and the green light. But the NBA hasn't consistently given him that opportunity, and the relentless, crushing pressure of being LeBron James's son has effectively forced him to shrink himself down to a role that keeps him safe from the most vicious criticism. Because if you define yourself as the defensive guy, if you brand yourself as the dirty work guy, then nobody can attack your scoring numbers. Nobody can say you're taking shots you have no business taking. You become invisible in the best and worst way imaginable at the exact same time. And when asked about the experience of guarding Victor Wembanyama in that very same Spurs game, quite literally the tallest player in the entire NBA, Bronny didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, didn't make a single excuse.
Something else for sure. I'm one of the smaller guys on the floor, guarding the tallest guy in the league, so it's definitely a challenge.
A brief pause, letting those words hang in the air, and then the kind of quiet, understated determination that defines who Bronny James truly is at his core.
But I'm up for anything.
I'm up for anything. 7 words. But those 7 words carry the weight of everything this young man has endured over the past 2 years of his professional career. A young man who is constantly, relentlessly being told by the world that he doesn't belong in this league, constantly being attacked from every conceivable angle by people who have never met him, and his response isn't bitterness, it isn't anger, it isn't demanding a trade or throwing a tantrum, it's simply, I'm up for anything. But to truly understand why those 7 words are so heavy, why this announcement about embracing the dirty work and finding joy in defense carries so much emotional weight, you need to understand the full story of how Bronny James got here. And that story starts long before he ever put on a Lakers jersey. The weight of a name. You know, there are certain last names in the world of professional sports that carry so much weight, so much history, and so much impossible expectation that the moment you step foot on any court, any field, or any stage, people have already made up their minds about who you are and what you're supposed to become before you even get the chance to show them what you're made of. And in the entire landscape of the National Basketball Association, a league that has seen dynasties rise and fall, a league that has produced some of the most iconic athletes in human history, there is arguably no last name that carries more gravity, more pressure, and more suffocating expectation than the name James. Because when your father is LeBron James, a man who many consider to be the single greatest basketball player to ever lace up a pair of sneakers and step onto a professional hardwood floor, every single thing you do, every shot you take, every minute you play, every word you speak, and every expression on your face gets put under a microscope so powerful that no young man at the age of 21 years old should ever have to deal with that kind of relentless, never-ending scrutiny in front of the entire world. Born on October 6, 2004, Bronny grew up in the unforgiving spotlight as the eldest son of a global icon, attending Sierra Canyon School in Los Angeles, where he quickly established himself as a legitimate talent in his own right. He was ranked as a 4-star recruit and number 20 in the ESPN 100 for the class of 2023. He participated in prestigious events like the McDonald's All-American Game and the Nike Hoop Summit, and scouts consistently praised his defensive instincts, his natural athleticism, and his remarkably high basketball IQ for a player his age. But even then, even as a teenager who hadn't even graduated high school yet, there were whispers following him everywhere he went. There were people saying he wasn't good enough to stand on his own. There were people saying the only reason anybody even knew his name was because of his dad. And those whispers, they never stopped, not for a single day. And then, in July of 2023, something happened that put basketball completely and entirely on the back burner, something that reminded everybody that before Bronny James is a basketball player, he's a human being. Bronny suffered a cardiac arrest during a practice session at USC due to a congenital heart defect, and for a brief, absolutely terrifying moment, the entire basketball world held its collective breath. He was rushed to the hospital, he was sidelined for months on end, and he had to fight and claw his way back to the basketball court while the rest of the world watched and wondered if he would ever play again. When he finally returned to action in December 2023, making his long-awaited collegiate debut against Long Beach State, he showed flashes of everything scouts had loved about him, contributing 4 points, including a transition 3-pointer, 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block in just 16 minutes off the bench. Over the course of 25 games that season, he averaged 4.8 points, 2.8 rebounds, and 2.1 assists on 36.6% shooting from the field. Those numbers, on the surface, weren't going to blow anybody away. USC finished the season with a disappointing 15-18 record and missed the NCAA tournament entirely. But the simple, undeniable fact that this young man was even standing on a basketball court after suffering cardiac arrest, that alone should have earned him a level of respect and admiration that, unfortunately and unfairly, he never fully received from the general public. His absolute standout moment during that freshman campaign came on December 30th, 2023, when he scored a career-high 15 points on 6 of 11 shooting against Oregon State, flashing pull-up 3-pointers, a breakaway slam dunk that brought the crowd to its feet, and the kind of aggressive defensive intensity that made NBA scouts genuinely believe this kid had legitimate professional potential. Against number 12 Arizona on January 17, 2024, he played a season-high 30 minutes and put together one of his most complete performances with 11 points, 6 assists, and 5 rebounds, showcasing his ability to facilitate and rebound at a high level. And on February 1st against Oregon, he dished out a career-high 7 assists alongside 6 points, 4 rebounds, and 2 steals, proving that when given extended minutes and real responsibility, he could impact the game in ways that didn't always show up in the scoring column. But here's the thing that nobody wanted to acknowledge at the time. None of those performances mattered to the critics, because in the eyes of the judgmental, unforgiving public, Bronny James wasn't a young man courageously recovering from a life-threatening medical emergency who was finding his footing on a struggling college team. No, he was LeBron's kid. And LeBron's kid was supposed to be absolutely dominating every single game he played in. LeBron's kid was supposed to be a lottery pick, and when that fairy tale storyline didn't materialize the way people wanted it to, the narrative surrounding Bronny shifted from compassion and support to scorn and mockery almost overnight, like a light switch flipping in the worst possible direction. On April 5th, 2024, Bronny made the decision to declare for the NBA draft, and the Los Angeles Lakers selected him with the 55th overall pick in the second round, making LeBron and Bronny the first father-son duo in the entire history of the NBA to share a roster at the same time. And while that moment should have been a beautiful, historic, once-in-a-lifetime celebration of family and perseverance, and for the James family, it absolutely and unquestionably was, the rest of the basketball world didn't see it that way, not even close. The nepotism accusations came flooding in like a tidal wave that simply would not stop crashing down on this young man's head. Critics aggressively argued that without LeBron, Bronny's resume, including poor shooting and limited college production, wouldn't merit a draft pick, a roster spot, or a contract. Others pointed to the Lakers' own long history of nepotism through the Buss family's generational ownership and questioned why Bronny specifically faced such disproportionate, vitriolic hate when family connections have been baked into the fabric of this league since its inception. Some commentators even framed it as black nepotism, arguing it was actually a positive counter to systemic barriers in a league absolutely filled with family ties and generational privilege. But the loudest voices, the ones that got the most clicks, the most views, and the most engagement, were the ones gleefully tearing this young man apart piece by piece. And the painful truth is, none of that external noise and public ridicule compared to what was allegedly happening behind closed doors, away from the cameras and the microphones. Because from the very beginning, from the moment Bronny James stepped into that Lakers facility as a professional basketball player for the first time, the whispers started. Not from the media, not from Twitter trolls, from inside the locker room itself. Cracks in the foundation. The first real signs of serious trouble emerged during the 2024 NBA Summer League, and what was supposed to be a celebratory, exciting beginning to Bronny's professional basketball career quickly transformed into something far more complicated and far more painful than anybody anticipated. According to multiple reports that surfaced in the weeks following Summer League, an anonymous teammate expressed deep frustration, stating that Bronny was treated as someone apart, not like all of us, creating a level of resentment and annoyance among the roster that significantly hindered the group's ability to build any kind of meaningful chemistry on the court. A US Sun insider elaborated further, noting that that kind of tension didn't help the group of players to build chemistry, and while the source emphasized there was no personal animosity directed at Bronny as a human being, the roster dynamics were clearly strained by the perceived special treatment he was receiving from coaches and the organization at large. And it wasn't just one isolated voice saying this. Multiple accounts corroborated the story, noting visible tensions and a fundamental lack of unity, with Bronny being perceived as the main guy on the roster, despite the fact that the team was supposed to be built around collective goals and shared sacrifice. The anonymous player even went so far as to add that the entire group was eagerly counting down the days until Summer League was over, highlighting just how deeply and thoroughly the dynamic had disrupted any hope of genuine team bonding. Meanwhile, Bronny himself was averaging just 4.3 points per game on poor shooting percentages, which only made the perceived favoritism sting that much more for the guys who were fighting tooth and nail for their NBA lives right alongside him, guys who didn't have a famous last name to fall back on. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, Summer League is a well-known pressure cooker environment. Young guys are competing desperately for an extremely limited number of roster spots. Tensions happen naturally in that setting, and it doesn't necessarily mean anything long-term, and you'd be absolutely right to think that. But what happened next, as the months turned into a full NBA season and then into a second one, strongly suggests that those problems didn't stay contained within the walls of Summer League. They followed Bronny into the regular season, and according to some reports, they actually intensified. His rookie year with the Lakers saw him appear in just 27 regular season games, averaging a mere 6.7 minutes per contest, posting stat lines of 2.3 points, 0.7 rebounds, and 0.8 assists on a brutal 31.3% shooting from the field and 28.1% from three-point range. Those numbers were difficult to look at by any standard, but context absolutely matters here. He was a 55th overall pick, the lowest of the low in terms of draft capital, getting scraps of garbage time minutes on a team with legitimate championship aspirations. In the G League with South Bay, however, a completely different version of Bronny emerged. He averaged 21.9 points, 5.1 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and 1.9 steals, while shooting 44.3% from the field and 38% from three. The talent was clearly there. The consistent NBA opportunity simply wasn't being given to him. As the 2025-26 season rolled around and Bronny entered his second year as a professional, he came into training camp with a noticeably different energy, more confident, more assertive, more certain of who he was as a basketball player. During his September 2025 Media Day interview, you could hear it in his voice and see it in his body language.
Here he is. Last year Media Day I thought was one of the coolest moments because we had Bronny and his pops on the set to lead it off, but now you are solo as you should be.
And that right there tells you everything you need to know about the growth that has taken place. Year one, Bronny was attached to LeBron's hip at Media Day, presented to the world as part of a package deal. Year two, he's standing on his own 2 feet, facing the cameras by himself.
How different is it from a year ago?
It's miles different. Like I feel very confident in my game right now. So.
Miles different. Those are Bronny's own words, and the confidence behind them was backed up by the grueling work he put in over the summer, the kind of work that nobody on social media ever sees or gives him credit for.
Everything is paid off. All the work, all the late nights, all the early mornings, putting the right things in my body.
And when asked about his role moving forward and what avenue he saw for himself on this Lakers roster, Bronny was clear and intentional about the kind of player he wanted to become.
I mean, as a PG, just being, having the ball in my hands and be comfortable with the ball in my hands and, running plays for my team.
He talked openly about doing the dirty work, about being ready whenever JJ Redick needed him, about learning every single day from the veterans playing ahead of him. But despite all of that measurable growth, despite all of that off-season dedication, the locker room tensions that had been simmering since Summer League didn't just magically disappear. According to reports, they evolved into something more serious and more direct. Reports from early 2025 had already claimed that Anthony Davis was constantly taking shots at Bronny, contributing to brewing tension that reportedly frustrated LeBron and factored into trade discussions. By mid-2025, anonymous sources alleged locker room attacks on Bronny that prompted LeBron to erupt in furious defense of his son, transforming what were supposed to be private in-house exchanges into league-wide buzz and speculation. And then, heading into February 2026, things reportedly reached an absolute boiling point when an alleged physical scuffle between Bronny and Austin Reeves broke out after practice, requiring multiple teammates to step in and physically intervene before things escalated further. Now, it is critically important to note here that many of these reports originate from unverified social media posts, YouTube speculation channels, and anonymous insider leaks rather than confirmed, on-the-record statements from the Lakers organization. The team has not officially acknowledged or confirmed any locker room rifts whatsoever, but the sheer volume of these reports, the consistency of the underlying narrative across multiple platforms and sources, and the timing of everything aligning with the Lakers' on-court struggles paints a picture that is extremely difficult to dismiss or ignore entirely. And through all of this chaos, through the whispers in the hallways, through the alleged verbal and physical confrontations, through the public humiliation of being called the most ass player to ever be drafted by strangers on the internet who have never picked up a basketball in their lives, Bronny James kept showing up. He kept working. He kept his head down and kept grinding. But perhaps the most revealing window into how Bronny has processed all of this pain, all of this rejection, and all of this scrutiny came not from the post-game pressers about defense and dirty work, but from the quieter, more intimate moments shared with his father. Because when LeBron and Bronny sat together in front of reporters after Bronny's first ever NBA basket in Cleveland, a moment that should have been nothing but pure, unadulterated joy and family pride, the weight of absolutely everything was still hovering over them like a storm cloud that refuses to move on.
Bronny, first of all, obviously you grew up here and you could hear the crowd, starting to buzz in that fourth quarter.
The question was about composure. How does a young man keep himself together with 20,000 people screaming his name, willing him to succeed? Bronny's answer was characteristically simple, measured, and quietly revealing.
I've been just taught to play the right way my whole life, so just me going in there and playing my game is always something that I'm going to do.
Playing the right way. That phrase carries an enormous amount of weight when you truly understand the full scope of what Bronny has been through over these past 2 years. The right way for him doesn't mean flashy dunks or 30-point explosions anymore. It means staying in his lane. It means not making waves. It means doing everything he can to survive in an environment that has, at times, felt openly hostile toward his very presence. And LeBron, sitting right next to his son in that post-game presser, offered a perspective that revealed just how deeply aware he is of the unique, unprecedented pressure his own child faces on a daily basis because of who his father happens to be.
My sense is that he's better than I would have been in that situation. 20,000 fans screaming my name to get in the game.
Stop and think about that for a second. LeBron James, a man who has arguably been the most scrutinized, most analyzed, most debated athlete on the entire planet for over 2 consecutive decades, is sitting there telling the world that his 21-year-old son handles this kind of pressure better than he would have at that age. That's not just a proud father's hyperbole. That's a father who intimately understands the unique, impossible weight that his own legendary legacy has placed squarely on his child's young shoulders.
They wanted me to be in the game, and the roles reversed. I don't know if I would have been able to handle it. So
LeBron's voice trailed off there with a layer of genuine emotion that was impossible to miss before he gathered himself to articulate what his son has truly become through all of this adversity.
Just commend him on, his composure, the way he approaches, not only the game, but just approach, life in general.
And when asked point blank what it means as a parent to sit there and physically watch your son realize a dream that he's carried since childhood, LeBron's response was as raw and unfiltered as you'll ever hear from him.
What does it mean as a parent, to watch your son realize a dream?
It's the greatest thing in the world.
He went on to talk about how parents try their entire lives to put their kids in a position where their dreams can become reality, and how Bronny and his brother Bryce both chose basketball from day one as their path, their passion, their calling.
Be their supporter, give them the guidance, give them the tools, give them whatever they need to be able to possibly reach their goals.
And then LeBron said something that cuts right through all the noise and gets to the absolute core of this entire situation, something that every critic, every troll, and every anonymous voice on the internet needs to hear and really internalize.
It's even more gratifying the hard work that he puts in every single day to continue to get better and better at the profession that he chose.
The profession that he chose. Not the profession that was handed to him on a silver platter. Not the profession that his father's famous name automatically got him into. The profession that Bronny James chose for himself, fought for, nearly died for, and continues to grind at every single day when nobody is watching. And yet, despite that choice, despite the cardiac arrest he miraculously survived, despite the summer league tensions that made him feel like an outsider on his own team, despite the alleged locker room attacks that tested his mental fortitude in ways most of us can't imagine, despite predictions that his career would last only 19 games total, despite every single person on the internet who has dedicated their free time to trying to tear this young man apart, Bronny James is still here. He's still standing. He's still working. His current 2025-26 season shows 29 NBA games with shooting splits of 40% from the field and 40.7% from three-point range in limited minutes. That is tangible, measurable improvement. That is growth happening in real time. Coach JJ Redick envisions him developing into an energetic, undersized guard in the mold of Davion Mitchell or TJ McConnell, focusing on disruption, energy, and defensive impact. Insiders like Dave McMenamin predict he could become a regular rotation piece by mid-season if his trajectory continues upward. And when asked about the Lakers' potential as a team heading into the second half of the season, Bronny's belief in his squad was completely unshakable, completely genuine, and completely devoid of any self-pity.
I know that our team believes that, we can be contenders and make a deep playoff run. So we all believe that, and
That belief, that stubborn, unwavering, almost defiant belief in the face of everything that has been thrown at him, is what makes Bronny James's story so incredibly powerful and so deeply resonant. He didn't announce he was demanding a trade out of Los Angeles. He didn't announce he was giving up on basketball or walking away from the game. He announced, in the quietest and most heartbreaking way a young man possibly can, that he has accepted his role, that he finds his joy and his purpose in the dirty work, in the defense, in being the guy that nobody on the outside talks about or celebrates. And for a kid who grew up dreaming of being just like his dad, dreaming of scoring big baskets in big moments in front of roaring crowds, that acceptance is both incredibly mature for someone his age and deeply, profoundly, undeniably sad at the very same time. Because the truth about Bronny James, the truth that gets lost in all the hot takes and the clickbait headlines and the anonymous social media attacks, is this: he's not a bust. He's not a nepotism baby coasting through the league on his father's legendary name. He's a young man who survived cardiac arrest as a teenager, who walked into an NBA locker room full of people who reportedly resented his very presence, who endured the kind of public humiliation and scrutiny that would absolutely break most fully grown adults, and who came out the other side of all of it with one simple, selfless, heartbreaking message to the world: I'm here to do whatever my team needs me to do. And whether the world ultimately chooses to celebrate that message or continue tearing him apart for it, well, that says a whole lot more about us than it will ever say about him. Love this video? Click on these cards for more.